Hello, my curlies. Erica here from Coils and Curls. Thank you for joining me for another Frizz-Free Friday. Good to see everyone. This week's video is on an article that was in the AARP Bulletin for July and August of 2022. And that article is drugs that may cause hair loss. I was really surprised at how many medications can affect hair loss. So that's what this week's video is on. It is on hair loss. We are at the beginning of a heat wave here on the East Coast. This is supposed to be a 4-day one, and it's supposed to end on August 5th. What I used today before we jump into the medications, I used the Mielle Organics rice water conditioner that you leave in, and I used the Lush Brand's Irish Sea Moss Gel. And then I decrunchified with the Mielle Organics pomade to oil. And this is what we have. I've only been out there for about 5 minutes because it's gross. And I really didn't feel like messing myself up before I had to do the video. You're welcome. We're going to take a brief look at the 3 stages of the life cycle of a hair. The 3 stages are anagen, catagen, and telogen. Anagen is the growing phase. This is when the papilla, which produces the hair by feeding it its blood flow and its nutrients, this is when it's feeding the hair and the follicle, and the hair is growing. So the hair grows anywhere between 2 to 5 years on average. Some people, their hair can grow for up to 7 years. And like I've mentioned before, our hair grows about a ½ inch every month. So you're looking at about 6 inches a year. Some people who can grow their hair past their butts, their hair grows for 7 years at least, because you can't get that much hair if it's not growing for that long. About 85 to 90% of our hairs are in this anagen stage, or the growth phase. Next is the catagen phase. Now, this is the transition stage. This is when the hair starts to slow down, and it only lasts about 2 to 3 weeks on average. About 5% of your hairs are in this catagen stage at any given time. Next is the telogen, or the resting phase. So at this point, the hair has stopped growing. The papilla, which feeds the hair, is now disconnected from it, and a new hair is starting to grow underneath the old hair. This phase lasts about 3 months. This is when you will start to notice the hairs starting to fall out. There's only about 10 to 15% of hairs on our head that are in the telogen stage at any given time. These are the little hairs that either come out while you're shampooing, while you're brushing, or finger combing, or styling. These are the hairs that fall gently down our body, and we feel them as they fall out of our heads. They're also the ones that fall into the back of our shirts and then tickle us, and we look like idiots trying to find that rogue hair that's fallen. Or is that just me? Please don't tell me it's just me. I hope everyone else has that too. The medical blanket term for hair loss is called alopecia. And then under this blanket of alopecia are 8 or more different types of alopecia. So I'm not going over all of them. I'm going over a few of them that are the most common and the ones that people are probably most familiar with. The first and most common is alopecia areata. This is when hair falls out in round patches. This normally happens on the head, but it can affect eyebrows or other parts of the body. This is an autoimmune disease, and for whatever reason, the body's immune system attacks healthy hair follicles and they fall out. The next is alopecia totalis. And no, this is not what you think. This is total and complete baldness on your head. This is an advanced form of alopecia areata, and again, it's an autoimmune disease. What they have discovered is that 20% of people affected with alopecia totalis have a genetic link to a family member with hair loss. Next is alopecia universalis. That is complete hair loss, head to toes. The next two are female pattern baldness and male pattern baldness. So male pattern baldness usually starts up at your temples or at the crown. And then what happens is that it all just starts to thin and come out until both sections are now completely bald, and the sides and the back are usually the last to go, if at all. What a lot of men do is they shave their head, and that's exactly what my husband used to do, because as he started to thin in here, and he was all gray from his teens because he grayed early, he decided that he was just going to shave it and be done with it, no more coloring, and that would be it. And so that's what he did. Men wear caps and hats, and my husband did as well. The thing is that kind of starves the scalp of air. And if the follicles can't breathe, then what happens? Well, they start to shrivel up. So a lot of men who wear hats, if you are their significant other, try to get them to stop, especially if they notice their hair is falling out, because it couldn't hide. Then from the male pattern baldness, we go to the female pattern baldness. And of course, it's different. Why wouldn't it be? Men are from Mars, women are from Venus. Our baldness doesn't progress like a man's. We will get the thinning and the receding hairline up front, but then normally our hair will just thin out all over, and then you'll eventually be able to see scalp. So it's different. At least we don't go totally bald, but then we can't shave our heads like men. The last is diffuse alopecia areata. This is the thinning of each individual hair shaft, and then it falls out. There are causes to this particular type of alopecia. One is stress, the other is sudden hormonal changes, and the other is, you guessed it, medications. Ding, 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 we have a winner. Before we move on to the medications, I want to take a quick run through of some of the things that can cause hair loss that are not affected by hereditary or medications or an autoimmune disease. Some of the reasons our hair is thinning is maturity. Like what I did there. When we mature, not only does our hair gray, well, for most of us, but it thins. And that's just a natural progression of maturing. Because let's face it, the alternative is much worse. The next reason for hair loss, which isn't so funny, is if you have had chemo or radiation. So normally, most people will lose their hair with chemotherapy and radiation, but it will grow back. Now, I had clients tell me that after their chemo, their hair grew in curly. Well, it turns out it's called chemo curls. And what happens is, because the chemotherapy destroys healthy as well as cancer cells, everything has to regenerate. Some people find that their hair comes back a slightly darker color. Some people find they have chemo curls. What they do say is that the chemo curls will go away eventually when your body returns to normal. But we know that you're looking at about a 2 to possible 7-year growth of most of the hair. So if you had straight hair before chemotherapy and you have curly hair now, know that it'll end in about 7 or 14 years. Is that good or is it bad? I don't know. I love my curls, so I wouldn't want to lose them. Another thing that can cause hair loss is if you are using products that are extremely poorly made and they are using ingredients that have absolutely no quality whatsoever. They could cause hair loss because you're using crap, for lack of a better word. Another reason is if you do tight braids or tight ponytails, you could be putting stress on the hair, which means that you're going to be pulling it out of the papilla before it's finished growing. Tight hairstyles, tight braids, tight ponytails can contribute to some excess hair loss. We know hormones like perimenopause and postmenopause, we have those horrible changes, and yeah, our hair starts to thin because it's maturity. Yay! Okay, alternative is much worse. Alternative is much worse. I have to keep repeating that to myself. If you have polycystic ovary syndrome and you're between the ages of 14 and 45, your reason for hair loss could be you have polycystic ovary syndrome. Leaves me out. Get yourself checked, and perhaps that's why you are experiencing some hair loss. Also, thyroid disease can cause hair loss. Another thing to check out, be aware of if you're noticing excess shedding. Last but not least, and that brings us to the reason for this video, medications can cause hair loss. And now we get to dive into Erica trying to pronounce all of these medications. This should be fun. This list is a lot bigger than I thought. And honestly, I'm not even sure if this covers all of them. The first is blood thinners and anticoagulants. The two that are listed are heparin and warfarin. And warfarin includes the Coumadin, panwarfarin, and sofarin. The next is antidepressants, mood stabilizers, and bipolar medications. These include divalproex sodium, which is Depakote, fluoxetine, which is Prozac, lithium, sertraline, which is Zoloft, and valproic acid. The next is antimicrobial and tuberculosis drugs. The only one listed is isoniazid. The next class of drugs are arthritis and inflammation drugs. These include etanercept or Enbrel, leflunomide or Areva, methotrexate, which is Rumatrex and Trexol. Next up are blood pressure medications like ACE inhibitors and beta blockers. Two cholesterol-lowering medications that also can cause hair loss are atorvastatin or Lipitor and gemfibrozil or Lopid. Next class of drugs is epilepsy and anticonvulsant meds. These include divalproex sodium or Depakote, lamotrigine or Lamictal, trimethadione or Tridione, and valproic acid. Then the category of severe acne and psoriasis. The first one is acitretin or soriatane, and isotretinoin or Accutane and Absorica. Oh my gosh, this is a mouthful. That was horrifying, and I apologize. Now, what can you do if you are taking some of these medications? Well, one thing you can do is if you're on the generic, you can ask your doctor to put you onto the brand name or to adjust the dosing, and maybe that can help. Of course, you must talk to your doctors. Do not do anything on your own without consulting your physician. Public service announcement. It will take time for you to see hair growth, of course, because let's face it, we now know the 3 stages of hair growth. Be patient. Might take 6 months for you to start noticing some growth. So don't panic, give it some time, but usually within about 6 months, you should notice some regrowth. Don't forget, we do lose normally anywhere between 100 to 150 hairs per day. If you're losing a wad like this and you shampoo every 6 days, that's why, because you have 600 hairs in a wad that need to come out. Just something to keep in mind. You don't need to count them. Okay, you notice thinning. What are some of the things that you can do to help facilitate your hair growth? You can use one of the myriad of products on the market meant for hair loss. There's Nioxin, there's Minoxidil, there's Hims, there's Hers, Viviscal. So there's a ton of them out there. The reason I don't use any of them is because I like my curly hair products. I know what my hair needs, and so that means I don't want to use these other lines that don't have products specifically for me. So what does Erica do? I'll tell you what Erica does. A year ago, I bought the book, The Lost Book of Herbal Remedies. This tells you how to make salves. It tells you all the different herbs and what their uses are. And I absolutely recommend it to anyone who prefers doing things more naturally instead of using chemicals. This particular book and the authors sent emails. One of the emails had an oil combination of essential oils for hair loss. I bought all the essential oils, I mixed it up, and when I use it faithfully, I see hair growth. I am so bad. I forget to do it, then I just stop doing it. I've gotten back into doing it again, so I will keep an eye on my baby growths for you. If you are going to use something that's an all-natural or an essential oil, you always want to check with your doctor to make sure it is not going to interfere with any medications you are currently taking. That is my advice. So do your due diligence so that you don't have a problem. That was my next PSA announcement. Another thing that I did utilizing the website from the Lost Herbs book is I looked up recipes for aging skin. I haven't really been that thrilled with the products that I've been buying commercially. If you want to spend $30 on a lotion, great, but I'm not spending $30 on a body lotion. And I just don't feel like I'm finding anything that's really working that makes me happy. So I looked up a recipe for aging skin, and I just made my second batch. I don't think my skin looks worse, which is a good thing. I think it might look a little more firm, especially like above the knees where, you notice that crepiness happening, and my upper arms. So I'm trying to use that more faithfully, especially during the summertime. I also had mentioned when I was doing the Mielle Organics video, remember I talked about the Buriti oil? I bought a little 4-ounce bottle and it is red. I have been mixing it with my body lotions and my body salves, as well as my skincare for my face. I think I see my little lines over here on this side, which are more prominent than on the other side. I think I see them reducing. These on this side might look a little better, but I sleep on this side, so I kind of mush my face over there. Hopefully I'll keep noticing improvements. That would be fantastic. And it's a lot cheaper than body lotions. And it goes a lot further too. Well, my curlies, I hope you found today's video informative and helpful. I hope we learned a little. I hope we laughed a little. God knows that's my mission in life. This Leo likes to entertain people and teach. I will be taking 2 weeks off because next week is my birthday week. Yay, me! I'll be 56, full disclosure, and I'm pretty proud that I have made it this far. And I'm actually kind of surprised I made it this far. Because in all honesty, when I was in my 20s or 30s, I couldn't even begin to fathom being in my 50s, let alone my later 50s. I always thought I'd stay 30. Who knew? Thank you for joining me. I appreciate it. I hope you don't miss me too much on my 2 weeks off. I am probably just going to chill and take it easy next week. And then the following week, I will be at Animal Adventure Park in Harpursville, New York, hanging out with Johari and Oliver and seeing their new drive-through preserve, which is actually called The Preserve. Until 2 weeks from now, my curlies. Have a great 2 weeks. I will see you soon. Ciao for now. So, these are, I wonder if I should have a drink for this. That might make it harder. Might make it more entertaining for you. I wonder what time it is. I think it's close to 3. Oh, it is. Okay. Wow, this is the fun part. Isoniazid, trimethodione, or tridione. That's a lot of talking. My throat is tickling. And we have sangria.